All right, let's jump into our first story. A social media influencer behind the walkaway movement got home detention for his role in the Capitol riot. So I know that one of the things that Brandon was concerned about was he knew that as soon as his sentence came out, that the leftist media was going to jump all over it and write their little hit piece stories. And of course, this is exactly what's happened. I'm sure this is what happened on Business Insider, but just to make sure everyone is on the same page with where we are, I thought it would be a good place to start. And I will make sure to correct any lies or inaccuracies that are in this article as we make our way through it. A social media influencer who spoke at a pro-Trump rally the day before the January 6, 2020 attack on the U.S. Capitol, was sentenced Monday to 3 months of home detention after pleading guilty to a disorderly conduct charge stemming from his participation in last year's deadly attack on the Capitol. Now, let's just be clear. I think what Brandon got sentenced to is absurd. It is an absurdly harsh sentence. What Brandon pled guilty to was essentially yelling at a police officer on Capitol grounds. That was what he pled guilty to. And they gave him 3 months of home detention. They gave him 3 years of probation and a $5,000 fine that the government didn't even ask for. And this was a Trump-appointed judge that did this. And I listened to that judge. I'm going to show you some reactions to the things that the judge said. I listened to that hearing today. I was floored at this judge. This judge was obviously persecuting Brandon for his political speech. The government very literally said in the hearing today that Brandon incited the January 6th riot over tweets he made in December. The judge talked about statements that Brandon made on January 7th. So the judge is like, no, I'm not persecuting him for his political speech. That is obviously protected speech. Well, then how do you reconcile that with the fact that the judge brought up speech that Brandon made on January 7th? When she was considering his sentence? Because if it was just about what Brandon pled guilty to, which was yelling at a cop on Capitol grounds, then there would have been no need at all for that judge to take into consideration any additional speech that Brandon made, particularly the day after the event happened. The judge seemed pretty pissed that Brandon wasn't able to, in the heat of the moment when you don't even know what's going on. The judge seemed pretty pissed that Brandon couldn't just zoom out and look at the whole situation and see clearly what was going on from every single angle. Guys, as someone who was at the Capitol on January 6th, I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what was going on until I got back to my hotel room later that night and I watched the footage. You can go back and watch my live streams. I have not hidden a dang thing of this. I had no idea what was going on. I imagine Brandon was in exactly the same position. And it is absolutely absurd to me that this is a Trump-appointed judge. But anyway, we're going to get back to that in a sec. Let me read the rest of this. Handing down the sentence, Judge Dabney Friedrichs pushed back against Straka's claims that he did not fully understand the magnitude of the violence on January 6th. Friedrichs noted that Straka had called for the rioters to hold the line and was near a Capitol police officer whose shield was ripped away by pro-Trump supporters. When Brandon said hold the line, he didn't mean violence. He didn't mean violence. And I'm a little pissed for Brandon's lawyers not calling this out more directly. That was obviously not the intent of what he meant, and anyone who has ever talked to Brandon actually knows that. It's very hard to draw the conclusion looking at the video footage, and particularly his comments at the time and immediately thereafter. He seemed to buy into the notion that it was okay to storm the Capitol. I'm sorry, this judge is a raging idiot. This judge kept saying over and over again, I watched the footage, I saw what happened. If you have seen that footage and you thought that Brandon instigated any of that, you are a moron. This isn't even hard. This isn't even this isn't even difficult to deduce. This judge is a raging fucking moron. I don't care if Trump appointed her or not. Moron. Friedrich's sentence included 3 years of probation. The period of home confinement fell 1 month short of the 4 months prosecutors had recommended going into Strzok's sentencing. In court on Monday, federal prosecutor Brittany Reed highlighted Strzok's wide following on social media and public comments, going back to December 2020, calling for civil war and predicting violence on January 6th. Not only did he predict it, he encouraged it. Reed acknowledged that Strzok did not enter the Capitol on January 6th, but said that that was only because of the tear gas that met him when he neared the door of the building. So the government's argument is literally that had they not been tear gassing people, Brandon would have entered the Capitol. And therefore, Brandon should be treated as though he entered the Capitol because he definitely would have if they hadn't been tear gassing people. Does that just seem wrong to anyone else? Strzok's defense lawyers said the Justice Department was improperly bootstrapping inflammatory allegations onto a guilty plea to a misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge. I think it's a really dangerous path the government is going down and what we view as the criminalization of political activities. I'm not going to read the rest of this because it's Business Insider and I don't really care that much, but I do want to read this thread from Julie Kelly, who was covering the hearing, and she's got some thoughts in that. You guys can go and check out her Twitter. She's Julie_Kelly2. So you can see the full thread. Let's see. The judge said a Trump appointee presiding, the DOJ claiming his actions were not 1A protected. So the Justice Department was literally saying that the First Amendment did not protect Brandon's speech, which of course is false. This is a very serious case, the prosecutor said. Friedrich wants to know, given Strzok's resources, why the DOJ isn't asking for a fine. So the DOJ, the government did not ask for a fine. They asked for a $500 restitution. The judge proactively decided to fine Brandon $5,000 because she was pretty sure that he could afford it. And I'm sure that's not going to be a problem. But that does for a Trump appointee? Fuck you, lady. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Man. This is your DOJ sentencing memo. Who wants to tell them? So let's take a look at what she's got here. This is from the DOJ. The nature and circumstances of the offense. The attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th is a criminal offense unparalleled in American history. It represented a grave threat to our democratic norms. Indeed, it was the one of the only times in our history when the building was literally occupied by hostile participants. Does anyone remember when that building was occupied by a massive group of women who were really unhappy about Brett Kavanaugh being nominated to the Supreme Court? I do. One of the only times it's been occupied. Please. Hang on. Click something I shouldn't have. Strzok attorney fighting the DOJ's double talk, blasting the DOJ for making incendiary claims in courts and documents while seeking plea deals for nonviolent misdemeanors. This is a chronic approach by the DOJ. This is the criminalization of political activity. It's protected. Yes. I was disgusted by what I heard today. It is so obvious to anyone that was listening to this hearing that Brandon was being persecuted for protected speech. Ragingly obvious by not only the DOJ, but also by the judge herself. This is America. This is what we do. Friedrich pushing back. Didn't he know when he arrived that the Capitol had been breached? I don't find it credible that he had no idea what was going on. That does not ring true. Now she's reading his tweets that say, hold the line. Strzok's attorney says he got caught up in the moment. At no point did he know actual violence was committed, which was true. Brandon would have no reason to think that actual violence was committed. The context of this is Brandon had been doing rallies for months and 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 months, filled with Trump supporters, and there was no violence at any of them. There would be literally no reason for Brandon to think that Trump supporters were violent because the entire 7 months leading up to this, he had been at rally after rally after rally after rally that were perfectly peaceful and nothing happened. And when something did happen in Dallas, it was Black Lives Matter that did it. It wasn't us. It was Black Lives Matter. No clue why anyone would take a plea and be subjected to these moronic judges, because he didn't want to have it dragged on forever. That's why he took the plea. She's mad his statements don't conform to groupthink about January 6th. He was not a peaceful protester, she says. That is provably untrue. The judge, there is still an effort to minimize what he did and what he was part of that day. No weapons charge, no assault, no destruction of property, but DOJ claimed without Strzok's involvement, the Capitol riot wouldn't have happened. It took him a while to come around. They literally made this claim. They said that if it weren't for Brandon Straka and his tweets, that January 6th wouldn't have happened. Does that sound ridiculous and absurd to anyone else? With a thinking mind, does that sound ridiculous and absurd to anyone else? Because it certainly sounds ridiculous and absurd to me. Friedrichs refers to January 6th as an attack on the Capitol and claims Straka condones violence. Straka's attorney explains far and above consequences Brandon has suffered, notes the disparity in the DOJ sentencing recommendations over other January 6th defendants. So there were other defendants for January 6th that got 1 month of home confinement, going in the building and walking around. But Brandon was given 3 months of home confinement because the judge says that he was encouraging others. That's not true. Straka, judge says, thinks it's okay to storm the Capitol to contest an election. They are not patriots, the judge said. He thinks that it's okay to ask his millions of followers for an audit of the election. My God, she makes Berman Jackson looks fair-minded. The judge said he started this movement, which the mission was to bring together all walks of life and to not be violent. His actions that day were so inconsistent with that. No doubt Straka is targeted because he started a political movement to walk away from the Democratic Party. Yes. Julie gets it. Straka again says, the judge again says that Straka supported a plan to storm the Capitol. No, he didn't. He didn't know what was going on. No one knew what was going on. Straka up now. He has submitted a formal statement to the court, says the DOJ describes someone totally dissimilar to him. I don't know this person. Straka received at least 500 character letters on his behalf, talks about friendships, family connections gone forever. I am sincerely sorry to everyone in America, even those who hated my guts before January 6th. He apologizes to the police and Congress, promises to do better. The judge rehashing the case says trespassing at the Capitol isn't protected by 1A. Deeply troubling. Straka used his social media platform to condone January 6th. He undermined the rule of law by engaging in storming the Capitol. Notes, letters, overcoming addiction, etc. The judge announced that that she sentenced him to 3 months of home detention, 3 years probation, $5,000 fine, and $500 restitution to the Capitol architect. So that's where we are. That's how it happened. There's also an article, I'm not going to read it, but I want to just bring your guys' attention to it, from the Gateway Pundit, basically saying the same things. The Gateway Pundit has always been very supportive of Brandon. So you guys can read that article too if you want more quotes from what the judge said. But, here's the thing, guys. Yes, the sentence sucks. It does. Yes, that judge was a raging moronic bitch. I said it. I don't give a... That judge is an idiot. But, it's now over. Brandon at least knows what he's looking at now. Listen, they delayed his sentencing 5 times. There were 10 total delays in this case. They kept dragging it out. I think that the fact that it was dragging out so long probably was the thing that drove him the most crazy about the whole thing. And so I'm glad for him that it's over. I really am. I'm glad for him. Yeah, he's gonna stay at home for 3 months and he's got to wear an ankle bracelet, and that's gonna suck. But it's not the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. Yeah, he's got 3 years of probation, but the judge did not require the electronic monitoring that the government wanted. The government wanted to monitor everything Brandon did on a computer for 3 effing years. And the judge said no to that, which is actually something, I guess. But what this does mean is that Brandon is now going to be able to start to get his life back. He's going to start to be able to build up Walkaway again. He's going to start to be able to make public statements again. You know, maybe Brandon trapped in his house for 3 months is one of the best things that could have happened to him, because he's going to be able to get to work and have all the time in the world. He lives in Nebraska. Like, what? Like, well, it's not like he was doing anything anyway. Like, come on. Like, what was Brandon really doing anyway? Matthew says, I guess the feds were not at walkaway events. I guess not. And then Starvard, turns out free speech does have a cost, which in this case was $5,000. Apparently, free speech does indeed have a cost. Well, guys, like, I really do believe, just on that note, like, I really do believe that we need to be we need to be pushing free speech. I mean, listen, man, one of the reasons that I say outlandish things on Twitter is quite frankly because I can. Because if you believe in free speech, the only speech that really needs to be protected is speech that you find offensive. So, I don't know. $5,000, Jesus Christ. But I did want to read this op-ed written by Dinesh DSouza, just because Brandon hasn't gotten a lot of support in this whole thing, and he should have frankly gotten a lot more than he's gotten. And Dinesh has really supported him. And so I wanted this on the record as well. Let me just take a look at this. I'll make the font bigger for you guys. The ordeal of Brandon Straka. The ordeal of Brandon Straka, founder of the Walkaway movement, in the context of his involvement in January 6th, is a chilling window into the media, how the media and the Biden Department of Justice manipulate the truth in order to cover up a political prosecution. Straka, who was arrested in the aftermath of January 6th, pleaded guilty to a single misdemeanor of disorderly conduct and is due to be sentenced today. The Biden DOJ wants Straka sentenced to 4 months of home detention and 3 years of probation for his conduct on January 6th. This by itself is not an unendurable sentence. As I told Straka myself, it's not so bad to be forced to live in your own home. Even so, the sentence is wrong and excessive for one simple reason. Straka basically did nothing wrong. He's being prosecuted not for what he did, but for what others did. Guys, never forget, Brandon Straka did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. And none of us should shy away from declaring that. Brandon Straka did nothing wrong. The left-leaning site Politico reported that prosecutors consented to a lighter sentence for Straka because he provided potentially significant information. The article implied that Straka was ratting out his fellow protesters and also ratting out Trump. Obviously, the Biden DOJ would salivate at this prospect, and equally obviously, Straka would be ruined among conservatives if he were perceived as some sort of sellout. The truth, however, is quite different. I asked Straka directly about what he told prosecutors. He said he told prosecutors that they were mistaken in identifying him as the man who tried to grab the policeman's shield. Prosecutors were ready to charge Straka with a violent offense based on video evidence, but Straka said the video clearly shows it was another man who grabbed the shield, and Straka's potentially significant information was to identify who that man was. So there is a conservative douchebag in Florida whose name I'm not even going to mention on this stream because he frankly doesn't deserve the attention, that's been running around saying that Brandon Straka is turning in Trump supporters and that Brandon Straka has turned on everyone and that he's a grifter. Now you're learning exactly what Brandon said to them. Brandon tried to help them identify the person who tried to grab the shield of the police officer, which was what he was being accused of. That's what it was. If you have an issue with that, dude, I just don't know what to tell you. I just don't know. Based on Strzok's information, this charge was rightly dropped. Obviously, Strzok had every right to seek exoneration on a false charge. He didn't sell out Trump, and he didn't sell out other protesters. In their sentencing memo, prosecutors attempt to fault Strzok with doing nothing to discourage rioters from removing the shield. But it's one thing to accuse a man of grabbing a shield from a cop, quite another to say he did nothing to prevent others from doing so. Full disclosure, Strzok is a friend of mine. We've communicated since he founded the Walkaway movement to encourage and embolden disenchanted Democrats and liberals to move right. I spoke at a Walkaway event in Portland a few years ago, and Antifa showed up with bats and sticks, only to discover that we had security guards armed with guns. The Antifa thugs suddenly became very well behaved, and one of them took out his flute and began to play it. Strzok went to the Capitol on January 6 not because he was an insurrectionist or a terrorist, but rather because, like most of the others there, he believed the 2020 election had been stolen. Notably, Strzok never entered the Capitol. This is significant because when Representative Adam Kinzinger, who serves on the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's January 6 commission, accused the actions of Ray Epps, the man who openly urged protesters to enter the Capitol, Kinzinger noted that Epps didn't break the law because he did not go inside of the building. Well, neither did Strzok. Lacking any genuine evidence against Strzok, the Biden DOJ basically seeks to have Strzok sentenced for his political beliefs. Strzok, for example, posted on social media, "Our government no longer listens and takes instructions from the people. They've decided to become dictators to the people. It's time to rise up." This is boilerplate political rhetoric. It's hardly a summons to insurrection. Moreover, Strzok posted this a month before January 6th, so his words can hardly be portrayed as an imminent call to action. This is literally, guys, what the government said incited the riot. Was this tweet from Brandon a month prior to the riot? That was their argument in today's hearing. Contrast what Strzok said with what Kamala Harris said during the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots that produced looting, arson, and even murder in the streets of many cities. They're not going to stop. Everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before an election day in November, and they're not going to stop after election day. Everyone should take note of that. They're not going to let up, and they should not, and we should not. What is this, if not an extortion to violence by the current Vice President of the United States? In a final desperate move, the Biden DOJ attempted to saddle Strzok with the actions of protesters other than himself. The sentencing memo says that if Strzok and others had never showed up, there would have been no Capitol breach. True, but Strzok himself never breached the Capitol. The government also lumped Strzok in with the crowd, saying in effect that what the crowd did this and the crowd did that. In a free country, however, we're responsible only for our own actions. I wish the presiding judge would consider Strzok's actual culpable conduct on January 6th, which is nil, and give him the appropriate sentence, which is nothing. That's not likely. But the judge can still send a message by giving Strzok a token sentence. He's already endured enough over the past several months, and the real guilty parties are the ones trying to lock him up. Thank you, Dinesh DSouza. Thank you for saying what so many other conservative influencers should have been saying but did not. So I guess that ends a very long year of this drama for now. Brandon's going to have to stick around home for a couple of months. I'm sure he's going to have to do stupid stuff with probation. But at least it's over. At least now we have a conclusion. I hope genuinely he has some sort of closure in this. Because I know he has big plans, and I know he wants to move on, and I know the entire Walkaway team wants to move on. And now there's at least a date range where Brandon's going to be able to come out into the world and do things again. And I can't wait to see what he does. If the Democrats hated Brandon before all this, and now he's been subjected to political persecution for his beliefs, oh, I would not want to be on the receiving end of what they're going to be on the receiving end of. I cannot wait to watch what Brandon does when he comes back. I truly think it's going to be a sight to behold. Matthew said James O'Keefe did not get much support when he was arrested in Louisiana several years ago either. Brandon needs to make himself I think that's go out in public so that it is untenable for this to happen again. I bet you that's exactly what he's going to do. Nick H says Epps on video telling people to go in. Yeah, those videos are crazy. If you haven't seen them yet, I highly recommend you do.